Auburn eyeing their first SEC win of the season when they welcome LSU to the Plains. And on the Plains now joining me is Wes Sinor. And Wes, let's talk about some key matchups here. And we'll start with the LSU pass rush. They are top 10 in the country right now. How does that match up against Auburn's O-line?
Well, as you saw, Lauren, Auburn's offensive line struggled a good bit last week against Texas A&M and Myles Garrett. That defensive line for the Aggies was just really able to penetrate through Auburn's offensive line, and I think they had about 13 tackles for loss. And so, and that all goes back to, what Auburn lost last season. They had Sean Coleman and Avery Young as their starting tackles, and both of them went to the NFL, and now Auburn's had to rely on Robert Leff and Austin Golson, who was the center last year, to kind of fill in, and they're kind of in a new spot, and there's definitely been some struggles early on, but I think Auburn's trying to make some adjustments. That they admitted that they didn't really have a great game last week, and are looking to improve on that. But with LSU, it's going to be tough. Arden Key is one of the best defensive linemen in the country, and I think that's going to be a huge test for Auburn. Obviously, if the offensive line is able to produce some holes, and that's going to create some lanes for Cameron Petway and Kerryon Johnson, and that's really where Auburn has been at its best this season when they're running the ball well.
Another huge test for this Auburn team. Can they stop Leonard Fournette? Last year, he ran all over them in Baton Rouge. This Auburn defense, though, showing a lot of improvement. Can this defense get a grip on Leonard Fournette and hopefully slow the run game down?
Well, they're going to have to if they hope to win the game. I mean, like you said, last year it was pretty much just pure destruction by Leonard Fournette on Auburn's offense. I mean, he only carried the ball 19 times. He had over 220 yards and 3 touchdowns, and probably could have had more if he wasn't taken out of the game once it got out of hand. But Leonard Fournette this season, he's been a little banged up. He missed a game in week 2, but he still produced over 100 yards in each game and had a couple touchdowns last week against Mississippi State. So I think just looking at last year's game, obviously that's what everybody's going to be focused on is Leonard Fournette, and not that Auburn wasn't necessarily prepared for him last season. They just couldn't stop him. And so I think, like you said, Auburn's defense has been greatly improved. This is probably the best defense Gus Malzahn has had as a head coach since he's been at Auburn. And that defensive line is really going to be the key there. Carl Lawson, Montravius Adams, Dontavius Russell, Marlon Davidson, they're all going to have to have pretty big games here if they hope to stop Leonard Fournette.
And Wes, I think another big key in this game will be creating turnovers. LSU's had some success this year. They've had 3 interceptions, 2 of which have turned into touchdowns. So how does the LSU secondary match up with this Auburn wide receiving core?
Well, Auburn's wide receivers, as we've mentioned here before, are largely inexperienced. They lost their top 3 receivers off of last year's team, and so it's kind of been a mixed bag, I think, this year. You've seen Kyle Davis, a true freshman, step up with 2 big catches against Clemson and then another one against Arkansas State. But really, Tony Stevens, I think, has been the biggest surprise to me, just because he's kind of been a guy that's really underperformed in his first 3 seasons at Auburn, and now he's really kind of emerging as like the go-to guy in this offense. Sean White targeted him, I think, 14 times against Texas A&M. And he keeps putting forward career best performances in yards and catches and touchdowns, and so Tre'Davious White of LSU is going to really be tough to throw against in this game. But Tony Stevens, Marcus Davis, Kyle Davis, they're all just going to have to get going because obviously I think LSU is going to be focusing on Auburn's run game, and because that's, like I said, what they've been so successful at. So the wide receivers are definitely going to have to step up.